Hello, friends. Welcome to Spike Week. I am Erik Beimfohr, and it's Week 4 NFL DFS time. We're going to talk a little bit of DraftKings, a little bit of FanDuel. We're going to build some teams, talk about our favorite plays, who's simming well, who isn't simming well, what kind of players are being paired together in lineups, and everything that you need to know heading into the weekend before we get injury reports and all of the chaos for Week 4 to put together some DFS teams. Let's do it. Happy Thursday to everyone. Again, welcome to Spike Week. I am Erik Beimfohr. I'm excited to get into the week for NFL DFS slate. Good morning, Shuby. Good morning to everyone out there, GM, all that fun stuff. We are recording this on a Thursday morning. Obviously, kickoff tonight with Thursday night football. But the main DFS slate is the one we will be talking about today. We'll dabble in some of the other games, but try to get us all set for our DraftKings teams, our FanDuel teams, maybe some of our underdog or drafters drafts that we will do tomorrow here live at 10 a.m. Eastern as well on this channel. So if you hit the subscribe button while you're here, you can get notified when all of our content comes out. We put out the Survivor show last night. If you're still alive, hopefully, in your survivor pools, myself and Rob Coakley survivor strategy for week 4 is out. And yesterday, I don't know if I would call it special. We do a lot of best ball content here around the Spike Week streets, but the second quarter on Underdog, weeks 5 to 8 best ball tournament. How do we navigate all the buys, particularly the week 8 buys? We discussed that yesterday morning. How the heck are we going to try to win this second quarter tournament? Rankings are up for that on the site. You get access with the premium subscription in the link in the description. Premium subscription. Say that 10 times fast. With a Spike Week premium subscription, you can get access to those second quarter rankings, plus all of our rankings, including NBA best ball rankings. I'm soon to be, I'm sure, third quarter best ball rankings on Underdog, and of course the weekly battle royale rankings for drafters, for Underdog, for drafters, and everything kind of in between. Join us in the Discord, all of that good stuff. You guys got the housekeeping going. GM Mac, of course. Penny Pinchers, shout out, cute dog. You have anytime somebody pops up with a dog avatar, including Shuby's avatar there. And Ann asks a question about, I assume you mean Torrey Horton, and Torrey Horton plays this evening. So we can talk just very briefly about because someone asked in the chat, I think it was Steve, our good friend Steve, the dog in the chat, asked this morning about Trey Benson. And I think that this game tonight is pretty interesting, but it's a little bit of a tricky spot. Short week, of course. The Arizona side is less appealing generally, right, from a just like a macro level side of things. They are at home, but they're home dogs in a fairly low total game against a pretty darn good Seattle Seahawks defense, in my opinion. Honestly, I'm not sure that it is even just my opinion. Let's see where they stand, actually. Let me fix this. See specifically where the Seahawks stand amongst defenses. Let's go to our power ratings over here. Defensive EPA, the Seahawks. Now, this is 3 weeks of data. They've played the Saints and the Steelers, not an awesome offense. And frankly, the 49ers, not an incredible offense. So, all of this kind of stuff has to be taken with a grain of salt in small samples without, adjusting for matchups. But nonetheless, from an EPA, right, expected points added is EPA. From an EPA perspective, the Seattle Seahawks have been the second best defense. Now, the Vikings have catapulted themselves up to the best defense because of what they just did in the dismantling of the Bengals offense and scoring 1 million touchdowns and all that kind of stuff. So maybe, we can't remove that. But if we neutered that down a little bit, there's a very clear case that the Seahawks, at least up until this point, have been the best defense in all of football. So that does have me, slightly concerned They have not been as good against the pass. They have been absolutely dominant against the run. The Lions have been the best run defense, followed up by the Seahawks in through the first 3 weeks, right? So it's kind of fascinating how insane of a pass funnel the Lions have been. Maybe something that we will touch on in our DFS lineups. But anyway, as it relates to kind of Torrey Horton and the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals tonight, I just wanted, it's easy to be like, oh, okay, Arizona at home, short week. I think the Seattle defense is the truth. And so that doesn't mean don't start Trey Benson, right? They are at home, as we see here. And I think if you have Trey Benson, you're almost always going to start him. Now, who you have on your team and depending upon your why is it doing this? And who you are, what league settings you have, etc., right? 2 running backs, etc., is gonna matter for that. But for like the showdown slate tonight, I do think Trey Benson is an awesome click. Let's just take a super quick look at that. I think Torrey Horton is an awesome click there. They have priced up Trey Benson, you see, is 8,800. So we're not getting some steep discount on Trey Benson, but he absolutely dominated work. Amari DiMercato may have played his way out of a major role alongside Benson. I believe the number was 87% of snaps after James Conner went down, including a bunch of targets. If we see here, just using the DraftKings game log, we see a whole bunch of targets even for him over the course of the last couple of weeks, which is really promising because that was part of the potential flaw. It was that even if James Conner goes down, Trey Benson is not going to get enough passing work, but that has not been the case so far this season. So I think Trey Benson is an absolute home run tonight. And I don't even know how much Torrey Horton is. I should probably know. 5,800 is not the world's greatest price, but I'm really into this Seattle team, especially tonight. Burying the lead a little bit, just the last thing I want to put on this game is if we go look at the top, essentially, receivers from the start of this season, there are 2 and only 2 wide receivers with a yards per route run greater than 4. As a matter of fact, now I've filtered out the guys with very, very minimal amounts of targets. This is still a pretty minimal amount of targets that I have it filtered for, right? But we filter for at least a certain amount of targets to get out the guys that have 1 target and it went for a bunch of yards. So from like full-time players, essentially, not only are there only 2 wide receivers over 4 yards per route run, there are only 2 wide receivers in the entire NFL, in the entire sport, with a yards per route run higher than 2.69. Zay Flowers is 3rd in the NFL at 2.69. CeeDee Lamb is 4th at 2.49, right? Then there's the whole mess of guys north of 2, between 2 and 2.5, right? There's actually between 2 and like 2.4. There's a whole bunch of guys. Malik Neighbors, Quentin Johnston, Kevontae Turpin, Alec Pierce, Tyreek Hill, Parker Washington may be notable for what's going on with De'Ami Brown and Travis Hunter, right? There's a bunch of names. Okay, so it makes sense. Puka Nacua has been, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the sport to start right now. I'm not sure that it's entirely debatable, but he doesn't even have the highest yards per route run on the season. That goes to Seattle Seahawk, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. He is honestly like the single most dominant. Puka has been this is a weird way to phrase it. Puka has been the best wide receiver, in my opinion, on the season. And JSN has been the most dominant, if that makes sense. Puka has been asked to do a little bit more in a couple of these games. The Seattle defense playing a big part in that. The Seattle running game playing a big part in that. Puka kind of is the offense for the Rams. Everything branches off of Puka. And you could say to a lesser degree that is also true for JSN. I could be short selling him here very easily. He leads the entire NFL in yards per route run. He leads the entire NFL in target share. He leads the entire NFL in percentage of team air yards. He leads the entire NFL in receiving yards, except for Puka Nacua, right? He has emerged so far through 3 weeks into not only a level of performance, right? He's He's a role that oftentimes this is where I often push back over the summer on the likes of the DK Metcalfs and the Calvin Ridleys and those types of players, the Jerry Judys, who are the perceived wide receiver one of a team, but don't really have the talent profile to back it up. I just wanted to hammer home like tonight, like Arizona defense, not incredible. Jackson Smith-Njigba is incredible. If you have him, start him. He is playing like an absolute superstar. He's playing like a first round pick in fantasy. And his role, this isn't just like getting lucky on touchdowns. His role is very, very real. So that was the main thing I wanted to hit on for the showdown slate tonight. Who doesn't love Trey Benson? Of course, I love Torrey Horton, and we love Jackson Smith-Njigba. Not super excited about any other Cardinals, quite frankly. Trey McBride is still a beast, but it's a bit of a tricky spot even at home for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's get into some of the main slate over here. We'll start it on, let's just pull up old DraftKings.com. We'll build some teams along the way, but let's start with a little bit of game by game. Start with Washington and Atlanta. First, most notable thing is, of course, that hold on, let me jot down me old timestamps here. We do have some of the things like the Sims and stuff pulled up here that we'll bounce back and forth on as well. At 11:30 is when we do Washington. Jaden Daniels back at practice this week. Does appear that he is going to play in this one. So the Marcus Mariota experiment should be over. Bijan Robinson, after a disappointing week last week, the Falcons, after a disappointing week last week, I think are in a really fun tournament spot. Drake London, though, catching some ownership. Bijan Robinson, though, catching some ownership. Also should note that Terry McLaurin is missed Wednesday's practice, as did Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. It does not seem that anything is really actually serious for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I believe the quote was he was a little sore. His knee was a little sore after the game on Sunday, and they think just a little bit of extra rest, and he will be fine. So no current concerns for old Bill. I'm not concerned. They did have a 3-way split in that backfield. If you would like to see the breakdown there, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, let's just go to his game log. It'll be a little bit cleaner. We go to this Raiders game, whether it be PFF or here on Pro Football Reference, are two places I like to look at some of this snap share stuff. And you see, so obviously 58 total offensive snaps for Washington last week, 23 for Bill, 22 for Chris Rodriguez, and 15 for Jeremy McNichols. So I think the expectation still should be that this is going to be a 3-way committee in Washington, especially if Bill is banged up at all, though I think Jeremy McNichols may eventually sort of fade more into the passing down stuff, but there's going to be a real role for Jeremy McNichols on passing down regardless. Chris Rodriguez did technically get the start. I think that they're going to do that. I think they're being a little boomerish in that regard. I think they're going to give the veteran the start, and then really Bill's probably still going to play a little bit more than he does. So not a ton of appeal there, I don't think, for the Washington run game, but and frankly, Bijan doesn't stand out too much to me on this slate. If we look at if we look at our defenses, and we go look at the run defenses, this is where the Falcons have been a little bit more. So from our commander side, if we did want to attack them while Terry McLaurin is banged up, we'll see if Terry McLaurin plays. I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies. He went to go see a core muscle specialist. These guys, that sit out. I think that the likes of Terry McLaurin should sit out if it's the right thing to do to get paid. Brandon Ayuk, right? Terry McLaurin, James Cook, they should all sit out. But a preposterous number of these guys seem to be dealing with injuries thereafter. So just a reminder when we get to next best ball draft season that these guys who sit out, if you don't want to, try to soak up ADP value, right, or CLV or whatever, it's also a reasonable thing to do because these guys tend to get banged up quite a bit. And Terry McLaurin is currently banged up. Seeing a core muscle specialist wasn't super exciting to me. But the Falcons' run defense has been a little bit worse, though their defense has been pretty good through 3 weeks. They obviously dominated JJ McCarthy. Dominated JJ McCarthy, where they were pretty good against the Bucs in week 1, and then despite getting blown out by the Panthers, I don't think that the defense was the reason why they played poorly. So in this one, I don't have a lot of love for Washington, even if Terry McLaurin doesn't play. It would certainly make Debo pop a little bit more, but at $6,000, I kind of think the offense needs Terry McLaurin. We will get into Jalen Lane. I think the next man, so Noah Brown also didn't practice, and Jalen Lane got onto the field just for a little bit in week 3. It was a bit of a blowout, so that could be part of the reason. But I think Jalen Lane will become a possible interesting punt here. He projects for about the same as Luke McCaffrey does as it stands right now as kind of an ancillary option. But I think the field will flock to Debo when it might just be a little bit more of the punts. Not that Debo won't have a good game, but just that Debo is kind of Debo. I'm not sure that they can build the whole plane out of Debo against this Falcons. Pretty spunky Falcons defense. Burying the lead 150%. If you played Falcon stacks last week, now those were very understandable. Bijan was popular. London and Penix and Pitts and Mooney and stuff not as popular against the freaking Panthers. And Penix just absolutely was a disaster. If you played those Penix stacks last week like Shuby, I kind of think it's a good time to go back to this Falcons. Well, Drake London is the DON says is a total smash at ADP 32 in your underdog drafts and your drafters drafts. I totally agree. The rankings are up on the site, and I have Drake London much higher than his ADP by the ranking. I think it's fair to be concerned about the Atlanta Falcons thus far through, a couple of games that have been pretty disappointing from Michael Penix. We were hoping for a lot more. Saw some interesting stuff about him really not trusting kind of throws over the middle and everything, which definitely looked to be true in this week 3 game. Some good stuff out there on kind of Penix and still needing to grow really as a passer. However, I think this is a pretty good spot for him to grow as a passer. If we look at the worst passing defenses on the slate, also a pretty strong pass funnel from the Washington Commanders as it stands thus far. Again, these things are through 3 weeks, but I really do like to look at how teams are setting up. Not so much exactly who the best defense is and exactly who the best run defense is, because those things are fluky and a little bit matchup based. But you can start to glean some things of this team is stronger against the run or stronger against the pass, which can set up the opposing offense may throw a little bit more and have a little bit more success throwing, or the inverse. Also, you can start to see some of those things come to fruition. And I like to take some shots on that before all of our, right? When we get to week 12 or whatever, these things will start to become, everyone will agree that the Lions are a pass funnel, right? That the Seahawks are a great defense, that the Commanders are a pass funnel. But last week, there was one receiver who laughably broke the slate that absolutely no one saw coming. And it was against this Commanders team, right? It was Trey Tucker. The greatest Trey Tucker game in the history of Trey Tucker games happened against this team. I'm not saying you can't just wash, rinse, repeat, but I think there's some flaws in the Washington defense from a pass defense perspective. My friend Jordan Vanek, who we do Sunday morning shows on Roto Grinders together, was talking about spotting some systemic flaws in particularly the downfield passing defense from the Commanders, and that was part of the problem for Trey Tucker. It's why maybe Bowers and Jacoby didn't get off so much, but why it was kind of the Trey Tucker show is they're struggling from a downfield perspective. That seems pretty good for Drake London. That seems pretty good for Darnell Mooney, and I think Michael Penix as well. Kyle Pitts. I think that the Falcons passing game is a really appealing spot for this week. Do you think they limit the Jaden runs coming off the injury? I don't think that that's how Cliff Kingsbury ever really thinks about that. Maybe he should, right? Maybe he should limit the runs, but I don't think he will. And I think this is just, I have absolutely nothing to back this up. I think they were mostly holding him out last week out of a sense of overwhelming caution, just being super cautious. And he could have played. Cliff King, it's a good point. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't think he thinks about throwing mesh routes and checkdowns and running the ball. That is for sure. That's about the only things he thinks about. And I have no, like, I'm not tempering my Jaden Daniels expectations this week, I guess is how I would put it. I don't think the injury is such that it's going to change too much. But anyway, that's Washington, Atlanta. I think it's monitoring Terry McLaurin, monitoring Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, right? This is Thursday. Last week at this time, a lot of things changed before the slate came, whether it was Ken Walker or Jaden Daniels or Justin Fields or what have you. There was a lot of stuff that happened. We need to make sure we're monitoring that. And I think there's a lot of it to monitor in Washington. But for me, the Falcons passing game really stands out. At a first look, that's how I'm thinking about that game. Let's talk about some Saints and Bills. The one-sided game of all one-sided games on the Sunday early slate in Buffalo. The interesting part about this is, as you see on your screen here, there's not much ownership coming to this game. I find that super appealing. It's also one of the first things that jumped off the page to me was that the Buffalo Bills are going to come out here and score a whole bunch of points. Now, the Saints defense hasn't been as bad. They've not been as bad as expected, but it's still a bottom, let's call it bottom 5, right? They're somewhere in the bottom 5 amongst defenses. The interesting part, Ken Walker got home on 2 touchdowns last week. Christian McCaffrey got home on a receiving touchdown against the Saints, but their run defense through 3 weeks has been one of the very best in football. Literally. So from an EPA per play perspective, they're as good, right? We just talked about the Commanders pass funnel. You want to talk about a pass funnel? The Saints have been arguably the biggest pass funnel in the entire NFL. They're right there as the single best run defense, and they are right there as a bottom 5 pass defense, right? So we're getting one of the best run defenses and exaggerating. They're a top 8 to 10 run defense. They are a bottom 5 to 10 pass defense. That seems pretty good for Josh Allen. Now, game script is going to say, and people will assuredly this is the James Cook spot. This is a James Cook spot. And I get that because it absolutely might be. James Cook can definitely score some touchdowns in this game. But I'm intrigued by exactly what Shuby is saying here. I don't think this Bills defense is very good. I don't think the Saints offense is awesome by any stretch of the imagination. But they're showing some fight. And guys like Rashid Shaheed, guys like Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson is one of the best fantasy tight ends, at least at this moment. Alvin Kamara is not like completely washed, right? It hasn't gone well for the Saints offense in a couple of these games, but in weeks 1 and week 2, they had a chance to win both of those games. Then they go to Seattle. It doesn't go so well. I think if our opponents are not going to listen to any of this data, right, they're just going to say Bills are going to win so easily. It's just James Cook. Who cares? And we get a reasonable ownership. Josh Allen does not protect for low ownership, but we get reasonable ownership on Josh Allen, and specifically Josh Allen with someone like a Keon Coleman or a Dalton Kincaid, where the market just says you can't play these Bills pass catchers. You just play Josh Allen naked, or you play him with James Cook, because their expectation is that the Saints aren't going to punch back. I think the Saints are going to punch back. I think Kellen Moore can manufacture points with this offense against this Bills defense. There's talent on this Saints offense. I think I like Olave a little bit better than Shaheed, but I like the Shaheed. Olave is also notably quite fast. I think those guys make for really fun tournament plays. You can definitely continue to play Juwan Johnson. I know 4,200 feels uncomfortable for sure. But I'm telling you, if the Saints punch back, and I think they might, on this Buffalo Bills defense, Josh Allen against a pass funnel, crappy Saints pass defense might just go absolutely nuclear, and the pass catchers are extremely affordable. So that this sort of game stack is one I don't think is going to be owned enough. I mean, you look at this. Look at the ownership. There's no one being owned in this game. The Saints defense is projecting higher owned than any of the Saints skill players. Because, right, the betting market says the Saints are not very good. They're going to get crushed. They're on the road in Buffalo. Buffalo has historically had a solid defense, but I don't think that their defense is anywhere near as good as those peak years, and the New Orleans is going to punch back a little bit here. Like I said, it's Olave for me over Shaheed, but I like Shaheed. I think you can stack this game up. I think you can go crazy with this game because the Saints are going to throw a ton, right? And so even if they don't punch back, the Saints side, you're probably going to get. Look, you've already seen like some people like getting in on James Cook, and I understand it, but I'm a little bit more interested in the passing games, both of the passing games here. I actually kind of like Alvin Kamara a little bit more than James Cook. James Cook is almost assuredly going to score a touchdown in this game. That's fine. Is he going to break the DFS slate? I think that's a little bit difficult to see coming. All right. That is that one. Two pretty darn fun games. And frankly, the third game here, pretty fun game as well. Detroit, in Detroit, the old Cleveland Browns upset the Green Bay Packers and now go to Detroit to try to pull off another miracle. This game is both super interesting and not very fun for tournaments given the expected ownership that I'm seeing on here. If David Njoku, David Njoku, like, I get it. He's getting cheaper. He's running a lot of routes. I just don't see a ton of upside for Mr. David Njoku as kind of a ancillary is not the right word, but he's certainly not the primary target in this Browns offense. It's a lot of short, really shallow stuff. If I go to Cleveland over here, we can show you ADOT of 6.3, right? Harold Fannin is the same thing with Cleveland. They both have 18 targets on the year. Njoku playing, more snaps. Of course, Njoku had about 81% of the snaps, Fannin at about 66, 67% of the snaps. But you're 15% of air yards, 17% of air yards, right? 5 ADOT and 6 ADOT. Jerry Jeudy has actually been the depth kind of field stretcher, if you will. Cedric Tillman, not a monster ADOT himself. So it's a really low ADOT passing offense. And David Njoku has yet to receive an end zone target or a red zone target. I don't suspect that's going to continue, but I just think he's probably a little bit overowned because it's holding on to some old, some historical data before Harold Fannin, before this sort of new Browns offense. And I don't love David Njoku for tournaments at this ownership. I also don't love Amon-Ra St. Brown at this ownership. The one thing I'll say about why this game isn't so, it sounds crazy that a Saints game feels more appealing than a Lions game, but obviously there's two opponents to factor into that, and a Lions game in Detroit. The Lions are going to do their thing. They're not going to get shut out or whatever. But I think it's about time that we start respecting the Browns defense for what they are. And it's one of the very best defenses in the entire NFL. They're wrecking everyone. They gave up 40 to the Baltimore Ravens, but that was not the fault of the defense. A, the Baltimore Ravens are the Baltimore Ravens, but B, it was frankly the offense putting the defense in bad spots, turning it over, right? Pick sixes, strip sack fumbles, all that kind of stuff by the Ravens defense against Flacco and co. If the offense can just limit that, which I do think that they can, as they did last week, you see what happens. Even a solid Green Bay Packers offense is not the Lions offense by any stretch, but the solid Green Bay Packers offense could do nothing. Could do nothing with the Browns defense. It is in Detroit. I get all of that, but I'm going to be lower on the Lions overall this week, specifically Amon-Ra, who is like kind of a volume a volume guy. He's had a good start to the season, but I think, the 42 against the Bears was a little bit predictable in that they would bounce back and have a big game. 42 is not predictable, but his big game coming in that, you don't generally get a ton of those Amon-Ra, like slate breaking performances. And against this Browns defense, it just reeks of one of those like 18-point Amon-Ra games, 17-point Amon-Ra games, or something that is fine, but it's not winning you DFS tournaments by any stretch. I also don't really love the Brown side, but the Lions have presented, as we talked about so far, a pass funnel-ish defense. And I don't think people are going to get to much of the Browns outside of David Njoku. And so if the field is going to keep going to David Njoku, I will just go to Harold Fannin at the same price. I think he's in play on this slate. It's a JMO week for Bree. I keep hoping for some more from JMO. That's not just he caught 2 long passes. Basically his entire season has been built upon 2 long receptions against the Bears. He should have scored on both, but he only scored on 1. And it's just been a pretty disappointing start for old JMO. If we're going to be honest about Jameson Williams as someone who's holding monster bags, he has played 92% of the snaps and just 12 targets and 8 catches through 3 games. He's a 13% target share. I feel like it's been a disappointing start for Sam Laporta, and Sam Laporta has like a 50% higher target share than old JMO does. Let's see where he ranks. Let's see how far we got to go down the list to get to Jameson Williams in. So yards per route run has been okay because he caught those 2 long passes. Sitting 1.74. Not great, not terrible by any stretch, but we're just yearning for a little bit more volume from JMO. They talked about it a lot over the summer. Maybe it's set to happen this week. I do think it's a tough spot for that to happen against the Browns. So honestly, not a lot of appeal for me in this game. Those Lions are all pretty expensive, and this is a really, really tough matchup. If I lose to a chalky player against the Browns defense, I'm willing to live. I'm willing to move on to week 5, right? If a chalky player goes off against the Browns, and that's just sort of how I'm playing it. There's a lot of other spots I like this week. One of the spots I particularly love, and these are the real famous last words. Okay, the real famous last words are, I think I kind of like the Texans this week. Rob and I talked about this on Survivor, like not the reality show, but in the Survivor Pool show last night. Rob and I talked about the Texans being the spot in Survivor that you latch onto this week, right? At home, you probably don't want to use the Texans. They're 0-3, backs up against the wall, but they play the Titans. They play one of the few teams worse than them. They play this disastrous Titans team. Nico is not going to be overlooked, but I don't think he should. And I think I would rather play Nico Collins than play the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams. I know it's a different price tier. But if we just look at where Nico sits amongst all these kind of superstars, the target share is incredible, 29%. The air yard share is awesome. It's just the likes of Jackson Smith and Jigba are ruining our view on these guys. But he's playing all the snaps. He's getting a ton of air yards. He's getting a ton of targets. But specifically in the kind of money zone, if you will, in the red zone, in the end zone, is where they're really heavily targeting Nico. It hasn't popped yet for an absolute total spikes, game yet for Nico Collins, although last week was really good, right? What did he finish at? 30 last week? Yeah, 26, despite he keeps getting banged up, right? He got over 100 yards. He could have had 2 touchdowns both of the last 2 games. I think that Nico is as good as we thought Nico was, and this is finally a spot for the Texans offense to get going a little bit. The Titans defense is bad. I think that Nico Collins can have his way with this secondary, and their backs are against a wall. 0-3. when DeMeco Ryans' back gets put against the wall, does that mean he gives the ball to Nick Chubb more? I don't know. That's a risk. It's a very real risk. Woody Marks did start to infringe upon the Nick Chubb role in week 3 because, spoiler, Nick Chubb is not very good at football anymore. And that's too bad, but it is the fact of the matter. And Nick Chubb is just not that good. That's been a little bit of a split backfield. Dario Gumbawale went away. So if you really wanted to say, let's get out ahead of Woody Marks, I wouldn't call you crazy and like the Millie Maker in a pretty good spot, but I do think it's just going to be a Chubb and Woody tag team. I don't know, trying to come up with the inappropriate phrasing that isn't super duper inappropriate, but the Woody Chubb show. Yeah, we got to find a better name for that. But anyway, I do think they're going to split that backfield, and it's really just wheels up for Nico Collins. Christian Kirk did come back to 8 targets last week. I don't think he's like absolutely insane. The problem for like game stacks here, like why this is different to me than like the Bills and the Saints, which sounds crazy. Like you like the Saints better than you like the Titans. And like, well, yes, I do. I firmly believe that the Houston Texans have a really good defense. Again, a couple weeks of sample size, but they've played some solid offenses, right? The Texans have, and have really held them in check for the most part. Should have won last game, gave up a big play to Brian Thomas Jr. at the end and lose to the Jaguars, but they should have won last week. We could argue about one of the other their first 2 games, but it's been entirely on the backs of the defense, generally speaking. The run defense hasn't been quite as good, but I think that their pass defense is like elite. It's like truly pretty elite. And the Titans have shown me absolutely nothing. Nothing. I thought last week would be a solid bounce back week, and it was better. But like, does that really count as a bounce back? That's like, it's more like a dead cat bounce or whatever, right? Like it went up, but there wasn't really any life in that body for the Titans. Brian Callahan, it's a mess. It's a mess in Tennessee. So it's much more of like a Nico thing to me. Stroud is, I think, in play, but this game is really a story of Nico Collins for me. I think it's kind of Nico or bust, just because of the way the Texans games are generally going to play out with that defense and the way DeMeco Ryans wants to play. I don't love like heavy exposure overall to the game, and definitely not to the Titans on the road against this defense. Yeah, I'm so glad to be. I am 37 going on 13. That is for sure. I will never not laugh at the childish jokes. Won't happen. And I hope I always do laugh at, that's what she said. And all that, like, I will never not laugh at all of that and stupid, inappropriate, childish puns. But speaking of terrible teams duking it out here, that is, we didn't talk like kind of slate texture and stuff like that. Something to consider for this slate is it is like all the bad teams. There are some of the elite quarterbacks, but it's a little bit lacking for. So here's how I would phrase this. There are some of the elite teams. There are not some of the environments that have our Coors Fields, if you will, are not there. No Bengals, no Cowboys, no Dolphins and Jets play on Monday night. Not that the Dolphins are quite the Coors Field, but they have a very bad defense as well with enough offensive firepower to punch back, right? Those spots have been, for me so far through 3 weeks, this slate feels almost like we're starting a new season, because every week has sort of been, okay, let's go attack the Bengals. Let's go attack the Cowboys. Let's attack the Dolphins, because they've been right. And the Bears and what have you. But there's still some appealing spots here, but we don't have kind of the tried and true, let's just go to the Coors Field game, right? More runs get scored in Coors Field. Let's keep it simple, stupid. We don't have that on this slate. So you get some grosser games like Carolina and New England that just probably have to be a little bit. Okay, that is, I'm not saying that. That is very inappropriate, but very funny. Very good. They definitely got to put an end zone dance together between the two of them. But anyway, Carolina and New England is both the grossest game and kind of fun. I don't believe what we saw last week from the Carolina Panthers defense is anything remotely real. They, of course, shut down that Falcons defense, but they have been one of the worst defenses in the league for multiple years running. That has not been completely the case thus far, which I do find interesting on this slate. I'm not going to bury. I was going to bury the lead, but I'm not going to bury the lead. What you see for the Carolina Panthers from a defense perspective is, I think the pass defense is like serviceable. I don't think it's amazing, but I think the pass defense is serviceable for Carolina. JC Horn is pretty good. They have some intriguing warm bodies, right, from a pass defense perspective, and they did a really good job last week against the Falcons and Penix. They shut down Marvin Harrison, right? They shut down Brian Thomas Jr. Some of those issues are those teams that they played, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison, right? The Cardinals, and what's going on with the Jags. Some of those teams are the problem. But shutting down, right, Drake London, Marvin Harrison, Brian Thomas Jr., shutting down all of those passing games, generally speaking, I think there's something real to that. And so, as appealing as maybe at first glance Drake May is, the lead here is Ramondre Stevenson can't hold on to the football. Antonio Gibson stinks. Travion Henderson made a mistake in week 2, blowing a pass block, right? Blowing a pass pro rep that got Drake May sacked and it got him benched in week 2. But I think it just makes too much sense, which means it won't happen, but it makes too much sense for this to be okay, come on now. Let's hand over the keys to Travion here. There was a note in practice yesterday, or it might have been this morning. Anyway, not important. So these are things that don't necessarily like always remain sticky heading into the games. But who leads drills and leads like 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 and that kind of stuff in practice at each position tends to be the order in which players will play in the game. If you recall, over the summer, part of the reason why we were more excited, this is a small little element, right? But over the summer for the Detroit Lions, historically, for every real life game, every drill in practice, everything, David Montgomery was the starting running back. He led them through drills. He led them, right? He was the first guy up in 7-on-7 and all this different kinds of stuff. Jahmyr Gibbs was, obviously not like a backup, but he did not start games. So that generally led to, right, they would just rotate drives. D-Monk gets first, Gibbs gets the second, D-Monk gets the third, Gibbs gets the fourth. And then they would, there'd be some nuance to that. Sometimes they needed Gibbs, whatever. Then this summer, that flipped. Over the course of the summer, Gibbs was the starter in every practice and the starter in every drill and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, so maybe this like handing of the baton to, Gibbs was never going to be 80% of the snaps or something like that, but maybe Gibbs gets 65 or 60 or right, just gets more. And that has largely been the case to start the season. He has been the starter. He has gotten more of the work from David Montgomery. I know D-Mont just had a big game, but the Gibbs role has come to fruition. And part of it was like, whoa, they showed us, right? They showed us their hand over the summer. And this week, the Patriots showed us their hand in the same manner that Travion has been the first guy up in the running back room. Ramondre has actually been third. So if you're thinking about starting Ramondre in your fantasy league, I think that the fumble thing might be a real issue. So that's all a long-winded way of saying, I think this is the week to take shots on Travion Henderson. I think the Panthers pass defense is reasonable to solid. I think the Patriots pass offense is not that great. And I think the Panthers run defense is bad, despite doing reasonably well against Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. I think that game script got away from the Falcons quick, fast, and in a hurry. As you see here on your screen, T-Mac is going to catch some ownership, and I think he should. We need to monitor his injury, by the way. Did not practice on Wednesday. I think he'll be fine. I don't want to play running backs really against the New England Patriots. I think that they are also a bit of a pass funnel. So it's really T-Mac or bust. We'll say Jatavian Sanders is week to week with the high ankle sprain. I don't want to play Tommy Tremble. Okay. Let's put that out there. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that there is a $2,700 tight end if you really need a punt who is on this team in a pass funnel type spot, and the starter, Jatavian Sanders, is out. Didn't Stevenson lead the league in running back fumbles recently? I actually am unsure. I don't know who led the league in fumbles. We can look it up. Where did my tab go? Here we go. Let's go. Leaders. How do you do? I wonder if is fumbles on here? There we go. Oh, so this is this year. Can I go to? No. Previous season. So the quarterbacks will be at the top. Let's just go to Ramondre then. See how many fumbles old Ramondre had or has had over the course of his career. 16. Good God, man. 16 fumbles. He's fumbled 7 times last year in 15 games. Only 1 in 2023, 4 in 2022, 2 in 2021, and he has fumbled twice already in 2025. So I think Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels are not the coaches that probably will put up with that stuff. Notably, TreVeyon Henderson never fumbled at Ohio State. And that's not hyperbole. It never happened. TreVeyon Henderson doesn't put the ball on the ground. So these coaches care about that kind of stuff. And I think this is, for me, this is the week for sort of that to come to fruition. You see from an ownership perspective, not drawing much ownership because he's projecting for, 11 or 12 points, but he did get up to, I believe, 11 carries, 14 total opportunities last week. The efficiency was not there, but we know he has the passing game chops. He's had the passing game chops pretty much in every game so far this season. If they really do start to hand over some of the keys against the Panthers at home, I think is a really, really good spot for TreVeyon Henderson in tournaments down to 5,200 on DraftKings. All right, let's talk about Chargers and the Giants. The old Jackson Dart show will commence in week 4. Unfortunately for Jackson Dart, I don't think this is the ideal spot to be starting. At least he's at home. So there's a positive. At least he's at home. But the Chargers defense has been outstanding through 3 weeks. And I don't think the Giants infrastructure is good enough to get super excited about Jackson Dart. He is 4,500 on DraftKings. He does run, and I am excited for him overall. But I don't know that in his first game in this spot is where I really want to attack him from a DFS perspective. Because he's 4,500, he will get some ownership, right? Because you're going to project as a very good point per dollar play as a 4,500 rushing quarterback with Malik Neighbors to throw to in this spot. If I were going to play a Giant, I do actually think it would be Cam Skattebo first. Tyrone Tracy is out with a dislocated shoulder, out for multiple weeks. And Devin Singletary will certainly mix into this backfield, but Cam Skattebo at 5,500 in just about any matchup is probably too cheap. I worry about ownership possibly running away from us here on a Giants running back against a really good chart. Like the Chargers defense is straight up really good. We got 5th in EPA per play. However, the run defense hasn't been as good. You see, so plus numbers are bad for defense, good for offense, right? So when you're in the plus, that means you're allowing more expected points per play, or you're allowing positive expected points per play. That's not good. I will say they are, so far through 3 weeks, they have been the 5th worst run defense and the tied for the 3rd best pass defense. So if I'm going to play a Giant, again, these are 3-week samples, but something I like to look at to see if there's something that maybe the ownership isn't, right? The projections and the ownership aren't fully factoring this thing in. It's not just the fact that Cam Scatterboo is going to get all the work. I think the matchup has the potential to be appealing for him. He had 8 targets last week. He caught 6 passes. Does it go the same with Jackson Dart? Probably. I don't think systemically anything's going to change from Russell Wilson moonballing it up to Jackson Dart for Cam Scatterboo's receiving profile. And so he just has, like, even on the Giants, this profile in terms of not like his college profile, but I guess sort of the high value touch, like consolidation of high value touches. We fall in love with, like, oh my God, he gets every snap. He gets every running back touch. And that stuff matters. If Devin Singletary comes in and steals some stuff to keep Cam Scatterboo, keep him fresh, who cares? So long as he's getting the goal line work, which of course he will. He's a freaking 250-pound tank. And if he's getting the passing down stuff, right? This is why Javonte Williams has been so powerful. It's not that he's not giving some snaps and touches to Miles Sanders. It's that Javonte gets all the high value stuff. We want the high value stuff, right? And Cam Scatterboo has that for the foreseeable future. Maybe for the rest of the season for the New York Giants, even when Tyrone Tracy comes back. He's a huge standout for me in this game. As much as I love Malik Neighbors, I'm not super interested in him. But sort of also, I don't know about burying the lead, but the Chargers side is really, really appealing. The Giants defense has not been particularly good, and that Giants run defense has not been particularly good either. They are literally tied with the Chargers from a run defense EPA perspective. However, they've just been very bad because they also haven't been good against the pass. They've been very poor, even worse against the pass. I think you can just fire up Chargers this week is what I'm getting at. Najee Harris is, of course, out for the season. Amarian Hampton is only 5,900 in his stead, right? They have yet to add another running back, which I thought was interesting. They like, I guess, Hassan Haskins, but Amarian Hampton has popped up for a big week. Did pop up for a big week last week. 26 touches in that game for Amarian Hampton, and having that high value touch role, but on the Chargers against a bad Giants defense, yeah, sign me up. He's going to be very popular. I think it's very conceivable that we look back and we say, Amarian Hampton was going to be popular. I have a pretty clear run back in Cam Scatterboo or Malik Neighbors or both. I could just do the Herbert stuff. Herbert, QJ, is Ladd finally going to do something? Is Keenan just going to keep scoring touchdowns? I will say I would rather play Ladd. Again, famous last words. I would rather play Ladd than Keenan and maybe even QJ as well. It's not that I think like there's something inherently not real about Keenan's role or QJ's role. I think QJ has taken a leap. I think Keenan is still good at the game, but I don't think Keenan has a role that's like you're ever going to be like, oh, shucks, my slate's over because I didn't play Keenan Allen. It's like if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're going to get like 11 points or something like that. And so then even if, right, the guy hasn't scored 20 yet in a game and he's continuing to be very popular, doesn't mean he can't score 20. There's target volume here, but it's kind of outside of some end zone targets. It's not, it's very old school Wandale, old school Keenan Allen, quite frankly, but just with a little lower volume. You have to forgive me if I don't think Ladd's going to have 0 good games on the entire season. And so from like a leverage perspective, I think that the Herbert Ladd stuff, you can include QJ, you can include Keenan. Do not include Tyler Conklin if Will Dissly is out this week. But if Will Dissly is out this week, Oronde Gadsden didn't really get that many more snaps. I don't know what the latest is on Will Dissly. Let's see what Let's see what old DraftKings says, so I don't have to open up another tab. He was not there on Wednesday. I do just want to say the Gadsden stuff was pretty crazy. If we go look at his games real quick, the only game he got in was last week. He didn't play that much, but when he was on the field, they were throwing him the football. You see here, we're talking about 17 pass snaps. How many total snaps? 22 total snaps, 17 passing snaps, 15 routes, right? So the receiving is routes. He ran 15 routes. He was targeted on 6 of them. 8 of them were from the slot, 2 out wide. So he wasn't even really operating as a tight end. He was 7 in line, right? He's kind of Harold Fannin in his role. 3 yards per route run, 6 targets on 15 routes is pretty crazy. I'm not saying that's you want to talk about micro samples, but if Will Dissly does not play, they mentioned that Gadsden has earned probably more of a role. I think it's very conceivable that he probably not even in the projections. Yeah. So he's not even in the projections yet. He will become a part of the projections, of course, if Will Dissly misses, but that's one to monitor, I think. If Will Dissly comes back, I don't think you want to, maybe in the Millie Maker or something like that. But I assume he's probably like 2,600. I think that's an interesting way to play. If he's going to get any form of elevated role, this is a pretty good matchup. And he was earning an absolute shitload of targets on a very limited amount of volume last week. All right, enough about the Giants and the Chargers. Let's talk Eagles and Bucks. This game really, really will throw you for a loop, I think. If you go look back at the history of Jalen Hurts against the Bucks, it's pretty funny. So for those of you that don't know, Todd Bowles is the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is a defensive coach. He doesn't run the offense. He's a defensive coach. But more specifically, he is a defensive coach that brings a ton of pressure. He's a little bit old school, and he likes to stop the run. They do stop the run very well with the Bucks, something notable for Saquon Barkley. They stop the run. Having Vita Vea helps with that. But nonetheless, they stop the run, and they bring a lot of pressure. They blitz, something Jalen Hurts has struggled with over the course of his career. If we look at his games against Tampa Bay, okay, that was a terrible decision to search that in that way. But if we look at here we go. Last loss, right? They lost to Washington in week 16 of last year. But in week 4, they lose to Tampa. 18 of 30 for 158 and 1 and 6 sacks, 44 rushing yards on 8 attempts. We go back to the season prior. Better, not incredible. They scored 25 points, but 23 of 37 for 277. Okay. 1 touchdown, 2 picks, a sack, 10 carries for 28 yards, and 1 touchdown. They played, I know the other games were in the playoffs. Here we go. This is 2021, right? So these are old. These are old, but it's interesting to see because this is he's been facing the same defense. Will he have figured it out this year? We shall see. 12 of 26 for 115 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 2 sacks, 10 carries for 40. So 10 carries for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. But what this all means, if we go to the playoffs, struggled in 2022 against this defense in the playoffs. I believe there was no A.J. Brown in that game. Then in 2024, right, in the playoffs, 32-9. 32-9 against this team. Now, Saquon Barkley is here. This is a very different situation, undoubtedly. But this Eagles passing offense, outside of one half of football last week against the Rams, has been unwilling to be aggressive and quite frankly, terrible. If you listen to the broadcast, I thought Greg Olsen was just chef's kiss. And I mean, he's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, but he was just absolutely nailing it. And why, when we talk about the Eagles and vent about the Eagles and talk about their lack of aggression, their unwillingness to throw, their unwillingness to just get the ball to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, throw the football downfield, etc. Greg Olsen was talking about it so perfectly. I highly recommend everyone to go back and rewatch that game and listen to Greg Olsen talk about basically how flawed everything the Eagles are doing, and then they wait till their feet get put to the fire, and then they start playing like an actual football team. It's like they show up playing sort of not to lose, and then if you get pushed, which, no Mike Evans, Chris Godwin may be back this week, so we'll see if the Bucs can truly push them. We'll see about Tristan Wirfs as well, left tackle for the Bucs. As Shuby said earlier, the splits for the Bucs with and without Tristan Wirfs are really bad, meaning when Tristan Wirfs, all-pro left tackle, is not out there, it's very bad for the Bucs, and they have not been very good on offense to start this year, so he's a huge deal. But part of that, if we're going to attack the Eagles, who on your screen you see AJ Brown 18%, Saquon Barkley 15%, Jalen Hurts, the highest owned quarterback of the slate, right, at 13%. Devontae Smith is north of 10%. Emeka Buka, of course, is kind of falling behind ownership, which is fascinating. He did get priced up to 6,800 with no Mike Evans. This game is going to draw a lot of ownership. And if Tristan Wirfs is not playing, and if the Bucs are still able to, the Eagles are going to score points. But if the Bucs are able to slow down Saquon Barkley, because they're really good against the run, and neutralize Jalen Hurts in the way that they have for years and years historically. They beat him twice in a row. I'm not saying that the Bucs win here. That's not my take. But I'm saying from a fantasy perspective, this game looks like maybe a good spot for both passing games. The Eagles maybe the Eagles learn their lesson, right? We need to throw the football. I'm not so excited about the Eagles game here. So, start your guys in your season-long matchups. Start Emeka Buka and stuff, of course. But $6,800 for Buka is a little bit rich for me. I'm pretty worried about the Bucs offense. I don't want to, if Godwin plays, I'm not interested in playing Godwin in his first game. How much is Godwin actually? I should make sure he's not 3K. Okay. Yeah. I'm not playing $6,000 Chris Godwin in his first game back. So it's just, honestly, this game is a little bit more of a pass for me, even though I certainly see the appeal, a one-off or something. I'm not saying to X out the entire game from your player pool, but it seems like a game that's more of a priority to the field than it is to me. The guy who would be the priority for me amongst wide receiver spend-ups, I love Nico Collins, as we talked about. But Puka Nacua, he's no Jackson Smith and Jigba, of course, with 4.6 yards per route run. David says Ibuka did not pay off that price tag in week 1 with 2 touchdowns. That's part. The Bucs offense just hasn't been super, super awesome. I do think, no Mike Evans is a big deal, but it's Ibuka's going to get a lot more volume, but is he going to get the efficiency that we need? Is he going to score 2 touchdowns against the Eagles defense? Eagles defense is not as good as it was last season, but they're not the Saints. They're not the Bengals. They're not the Cowboys or anything even remotely close to that. But Puka Nacua, you saw him on the thumbnail. I just think until he's like 9K is, I don't know what I'm not I don't create the pricing for DraftKings, but this is the best wide receiver in football in terms of his production metrics. I'm not saying he is the best wide receiver in football. I don't think he is actually, but he's pretty fucking good. He's pretty good. He's up there with the best of the best. And then you pair his talent with McVay, with Stafford, with Devontae Adams on one side to help draw coverage, Puka moving all around the formation. They're giving him carries. They're manufacturing touches for him. They're using him over the middle of the field. They're using him down the field. He's the best wide receiver weapon in fantasy football right now. And he's not priced like it. And he has only scored one touchdown, and it was a rushing touchdown on the season. If the touchdowns come for Puka Nacua in a matchup at home against the Indianapolis Colts, who are a fun, like, real-life story, for sure. Props to Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor ripping off big runs every single week. They look good. Michael Pittman looks good. Tyler Warren is a baller, right? The Colts are good. The defense is not what's been the great story. The defense has been along for the ride, sort of. They played well against Miami in week 1, but I think that was a lot of Miami issues, not so much the Colts defense being dominant. I know Puka is going to be popular, but I'm building my teams as though I would really like to fit Puka Nacua if I could, because he has like a 0% failure rate. It's an exaggeration. If healthy, he has basically a 0% failure rate, and he's scoring useful fantasy scores without getting into the end zone every single week. So what happens when we just talked about David brought up Ibuka not even getting there from a tournament perspective with 2 touchdowns. Now, I think he probably would this week. But what if Puka scores 2 touchdowns? There are ceiling outcomes of like 14 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns for Puka or something. Like, that's in the range. You can stack them. I don't really like to play Matthew Stafford, but you can play him and Devontae Adams on the same team. It is their passing game. If we go look at the Rams, it's kind of funny, actually. Here's the percentage of team air yards on the season for the St. Louis Rams. So just a percentage. Puka has 46% of the Rams' air yards, 46.04. Devontae Adams has 50.76% of team air yards. I'm not a mathematician, but that is 96.8% of team air yards between 2 players. 97% of the team air yards are between 2 players. So yes, I think you can play them together. This is the problem for Puka. Devontae Adams has 8 red zone targets, 8 end zone targets. Puka has 1 red zone target. Do I think that's going to be the case all year? No. Do I think I can soak up a lot of goddamn production from Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams in this offense? Absolutely. Absolutely. Tyler Higbee is a non-factor. Jordan Whittington is blocking really well. There's some great blocking clips from Jordan Whittington. He's on the field. Hey, it could be worse for a late round wide receiver pick in best ball, but this is the Puka and Devontae show, and Blake Corum is infringing upon Kyron. I don't think Kyron is bad so much, but I do think probably a little bit overprojected, even at 6,300, because this isn't the old school Kyron gets every touch. I think, he got 23 touches last week, which feels like a ton, but they had the ball a ton. They were running the ball up in the second half. It actually cost them. I'm not sure that McVay has learned, but you're still getting real work from Blake Corum every single week. So I think Kyron is fine, but my focal point is very much on the passing game here. I don't love a lot about the Colts, so I don't know how much I will be stacking this game. Tyler Warren seems fine. He's really good at football. And I think the Colts are going to be forced to pass in this one. I really do. I really think the Colts are going to be forced to pass. I love JT. Shout out to JT for the big game last week. We appreciate him. We appreciate him helping our best ball bags, but I don't love the spot for the Colts overall. The Rams defense is pretty good, even though A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith started to cook them. I will say it's possible this is one of those Downs games, right? The reason why Josh Downs is not cooking is because the Colts keep winning and playing, and not just winning, but specifically playing with a lead. So Josh Downs is a slot-only wide receiver. When they're playing with a lead, you're not getting into as much 3 wide receiver personnel, right? Whatever personnel grouping you would like to talk about with 3 wide receivers, you're not getting into it. 3, 4, 5 wide. You're not getting into those personnel groupings. If the Rams are going to have the success I think the Rams are going to have, especially through the air, Josh Downs, theoretically, if you're losing, gets on the field a lot more. He's earning targets. He's just not on the field a lot. It's kind of like the Dalton Kincaid. He's like the miniature slot receiver version of Dalton Kincaid. He is, I think, going to have a lot greater opportunity in this game. I think Alec Pierce got hurt. So Pierce is not confirmed out, right? He took a nasty spill. It was I know he didn't practice yesterday, but so it was okay, it was a confirmed concussion. Okay, so I hadn't seen the confirmed concussion for Alec Pierce. He took a pretty nasty spill, went up and made a sick catch, by the way, but slammed really hard into the ground. I'd be probably pretty shocked if Alec Pierce doesn't play. I think you can play AD Mitchell. I prefer Pittman and Downs. I mean, Downs is 4,100, but I think AD Mitchell is fine. I think that the Colts passing game is nice. I think that this game is a pretty darn good game stack on the passing game side. Now, famous last words of Sean McVay and Shane Steichen burying me with running the ball like crazy are very possible in this game, but I think both passing games are really appealing, a little bit more so because of the injury and the game script for the Colts, but also on the Rams side, it's just like so clear this entire offense revolves around two individuals, and you can soak up a whole lot of points in a pretty good spot for the Colts. Warren has put Downs in the coffin. Warren is definitely not helping Josh Downs operating in similar parts of the field, but the biggest problem for Josh Downs is simply the fact that they're winning all these games and playing from ahead, and not you just don't play. Even the best teams, right? Khalil Shakir doesn't play as much when the Bills win by 30. That's just, you're running the ball more. You're not playing your slot receivers, right? Josh Downs is 170 pounds. If you're going to run the ball, and not be in obvious passing situations, you don't generally want your slot receiver out there too much because their best skill is not blocking. So Tyler Warren is a good blocker, right? So that those go hand in hand. But Tyler, I think that the Colts the passing games on both sides in this game, I think are awesome clicks. And right, like compare this to when we saw the Eagles ownership. Like I ran some sims on Roto Grinders, just 20 teams with like a medium level of diversity, like lineup diversity, right? And I didn't put anything in, right? I just ran 20 teams. And what you see very quickly is a whole bunch of like Hurts, Eagles, Bucks, Trevor Lawrence, right? Geno Smith, Justin Herbert. You don't see stuff from this game that much. Puka's in here, of course. But you don't see, there's Rams and stuff in here, but there's no Colts in here. There's not like big stacks of that game. It's AJ Brown and Amon-Ra and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers shows up a lot, right? Like there's a lot of those guys showing up in when we run the sims, right? And yet I think that this game is like one of the most appealing on the entire slate, personally. Agree with Tyler Warren. We got 3 left for the main slate. Just talked about Trevor Lawrence. Now we're on to Jacksonville and San Francisco. I think that I do, more famous last words, I do think this is a super appealing bounce back spot. Not so much for Trevor Lawrence, but San Francisco has been really good on defense to start the year. However, they lost Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa tore his ACL on Sunday in their game against the Cardinals. I think that, dude, this injury stuff with the 49ers is like, it's hard to fathom. Juwan is banged up. We'll see if Juwan Jennings plays. He did not practice yesterday. Ricky Pearsall is still just 5,700. Obviously, Juwan is in the projections right now, so Ricky is not popping. But if Juwan doesn't play and gets removed, Ricky will certainly show up here. I think I've been drafting. We did second quarter drafts yesterday on Underdog here on the channel, and I drafted some DeMarcus Robinson, and I'll be interested to see. He projects for 3.8 points. I'm not certain I'm going to be dabbling in the DeMarcus Robinson waters. I don't think we got to get that deep. But it's very possible that if Juwan doesn't go, someone like a DeMarcus Robinson steps up and actually has a good game. Still no George Kittle, right? No Brandon Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall can't catch every pass, or maybe he can. Christian McCaffrey, of course, projecting for like an absolute shitload of ownership. I don't know, man. I haven't played Christian McCaffrey yet this year. I haven't really regretted it. Now, I think this spot is better, but like, look at this inefficiency. 32 touches, 24 fantasy points. 20 touches, 22. Okay, right? Saints. But like, he caught a touchdown against the Saints. So old Christian McCaffrey, which is a big, like, he's projecting for such high ownership and so many fantasy points because of the track record of Christian McCaffrey. Some of his efficiency is neutered down, of course. But he's projecting for all of this because of what Christian McCaffrey has been for a long period of time and what the 49ers have been. We'll see if Brock Purdy plays. I'm currently expecting Mac to play, but we'll see if Brock Purdy plays. That would help. They'll probably not change a lot. If old school Christian McCaffrey in a dome against the New Orleans Saints defense scored a touchdown in a game where the 49ers only won by a touchdown. If he scored a touchdown, 22 points would have been, we would have, if CMC scoring a touchdown, brother, we getting 35. You know what I mean? He's scoring touchdowns and not even getting to 25 PPR points, to getting to 25 DraftKings points with PPR and the 100-yard bonus. This is, oh, Mac is hurt. Oh my God. So now I changed my mind. I do think Purdy's going to play now. I don't think they're going to do Adrian Martinez. But my concerns are Christian McCaffrey is not old Christian McCaffrey himself, right? He is not the old school Christian McCaffrey. And this ecosystem is not the old school 49ers ecosystem for him. He's getting loaded up with touches. They're not as good on offense. The touches aren't as valuable. Brian Robinson is playing a decent amount. And there's just not a lot of juice in this offense, right? We're talking about DeMarcus Robinson, Kendrick Bourne, Sky Moore, whatever. Those guys, Jake Tunges. Like, Ricky Pearsall's fine. You can't build your entire offense around Ricky Pearsall and have a really good offense. It's just not a great offense. And the Jags defense is not great either. But it's like also not the bottom of the barrel in the NFL. I'm probably just not going to play Christian McCaffrey again. And if he does the 40-point thing this week, he does the 40-point thing this week. He's very chalky every single week, and I don't really feel he feels like, if anybody played MLB DFS this year, he feels a little like Mookie, where like we just kind of keep over projecting him because of the long track record, and like he's still good, like, but he's not. This isn't like MVP Mookie Betts. This isn't like Offensive Player of the Year Christian McCaffrey anymore. Not himself as a player, nor in his role is he that anymore. So I'm trying to be outright. Why we keep looking at things like the defensive metrics and target shares and air yard shares and all that is I'm trying to be out ahead of some of these things. The field keeps saying, nope, I'm just going to keep playing Christian McCaffrey. Don't you see all those touches he's going to get? And I would like to be out ahead of the fact that maybe he's a little bit over projected. This is true. When Betts hits, he hits. That's probably going to be the same thing for Christian McCaffrey. When all that volume comes to fruition and it works, he's probably going to have that big game. And maybe it is this week, but also that the ownership is dictating that he better start scoring some fantasy points because everybody's continuing to play him. This menu is going to make me vomit. Let's see. If we go to look at the CMC teams, as you see, it's a 9 of 20, right? So I ran 20 teams, like I said, with a medium diversity in SimLabs, and you get 9 Christian McCaffrey teams. I also plugged those teams into our DFS visualizer that you see over here. You can grab a CSV, right? I grabbed the DraftKings CSV from RotoGrinders, plug it into here, right? So those 20 teams, you can see how much of the players that you have, right? But then we can also break it down by individual positions. And then you can specifically start to see, right? What do the combinations look like? What are the most popular combinations? I know I need to zoom a little bit here. Christian McCaffrey plus David Njoku. Ashton Genty plus David Njoku. Ashton Genty plus Puka Nacua. So you quickly start to see, okay, not only is CMC on half of, right? If I spit out the Sims, spit out 20 teams, half of them have Christian McCaffrey. But then who's going to be coming along for the ride on those Christian McCaffrey teams? You can start to see kind of how teams are being built. And Christian McCaffrey is the highest owned running back on all those teams, tied though with Ashton Genty, which we'll get to in a little bit. Just not a lot for me on this San Francisco game. We got to wait and see about the quarterback stuff. We got to wait and see about Juwan. De'Ami Brown does appear to be out. That is not a lock, but it looked pretty bad, his injury to his shoulder. So we'll see on that one. I will say in that game, let's go to the Jags real quick because I do want to pull up what happened in that game. Why will this not click? Here we go. In their Houston Texans game. I don't know why I just did by team. From an offense perspective, let's just look at overall snaps. So they're in 70. They're in 70 snaps. I share something with you about who ran the second most routes or played the second most snaps and ran the second most routes amongst wide receivers for the Jacksonville Jaguars. De'Ami Brown played 23 before he got injured, and Travis Hunter did get to 37 snaps, but Parker Washington is who stepped into full-time every snap role without De'Ami Brown. Now, no one is saying you have to play Parker Washington and the spot is just so. But who had the most targets from the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 3 with the De'Ami Brown injury? It wasn't Travis Hunter. It wasn't Brian Thomas Jr. It wasn't even Bretton Strange. It was Parker Washington. Parker Washington, 9 targets. Wasn't awesome. I'm not in love with Parker Washington, though I do think we're talking about the likes of A.D. Mitchell and stuff, right? We should also shout out Parker Washington as a punt. 137 air yards in week 3. Next best on the team was BTJ at 64. So if this Niners defense takes a step back with, I think De'Ami is still showing in the, yeah. So Parker is projecting, but there is a little bit of stuff in there for De'Ami. But I think Parker Washington might end up a little bit under projected. He's going to play all the snaps, whether we like it or not. We don't have to like it, but whether we like it or not, Travis Hunter is a slot receiver on offense who doesn't play full time. And his role, unfortunately, is just not that great for fantasy. Is he that great? We'll see. Long season. He's a rookie. I'm not concerned about Travis Hunter's talent, but was he as good as we thought, like in terms of just exploding onto the scene and being an awesome NFL wide receiver? Maybe not, but it's an interesting bounce back spot for the Jags. And I can't believe it, but I think that the best play is probably Parker Washington. He might be the best play in this whole game, which makes me sick to my stomach. All right. Baltimore and Kansas City. The game that usually is the most fun, right? Historically, Ravens Chiefs games have been a lot of fun, and hopefully Tim Patrick can muddy this up. He did play, right? Yeah, he played. He ran 14 rounds. So he will get onto the field. Yeah, I mean, Cohen has not really lied. They have a vision for Travis Hunter. I totally agree. Consigliere says Cohen kind of explained it. I just think it's also conceivable that Travis Hunter may still end up being very good in the NFL, and he's just not this like level of superstar at this exact moment to just like dominate an NFL receiving game. I don't think that that's unreasonable. You know, RJ Harvey isn't dominant enough to take over the Broncos backfield. Remains to be seen if Travion is dominant enough to take over the Patriots backfield. It takes time sometimes. Colston Loveland is struggling to get, and then he got hurt, but Colston Loveland has been struggling to get on the field over Cole Kmet. It doesn't always happen immediately. There's only one, like to do what Malik Neighbors did, to do what Jamar Chase did, to do what those guys are outliers. The rookies don't generally come into week, even the number 2 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winning rookies don't often come into week 1 of their rookie season, especially when they're trying to play on both sides of the football and just like fucking dominate an NFL football game. So just something to think about. I see your question, Adrian. Let's do this Ravens Chiefs game. I am a little bit hopeful, more hopeful for this Chiefs game than I have been for the other Chiefs games, because it does look like Xavier Worthy is going to return. Our boy Jalen Royals is back. He can do some good cheerleading on the sideline of the rest of the Chiefs. Obviously, no Rashee Rice, still out for a few more weeks. I think this game is actually rather appealing. Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, both equally appealing at these ownerships. I think the market is not particularly excited about the passing game for the Ravens, but they're also not excited about Derrick Henry. And I don't love Derrick Henry in this spot either. The Chiefs have historically been a very good run defense, and up until this point in the season, they've been mediocre on run defense. They are, slightly below average run defense. They're basically like sort of net neutral overall defensively, a slight negative overall thus far defensively. The schedule has been tough, but guess what? The Ravens are a very tough also opponent to play. I think that if the field is going to completely overwrite, I love Josh Allen. We talked about Josh Allen earlier. I love the Bills. I love the Saints. I love that game, etc. But if the field is going to completely ignore Lamar Jackson in this spot against the Chiefs defense that hasn't been that good, I think that is really appealing. Zay Flowers had one down game, and now nobody wants to play him at 6,700 on DraftKings. Mark Andrews had 2 bad games, and then finally actually had a good game, 2 touchdowns, and nobody wants to play him. Xavier Worthy first game back, right? Is Isaiah Likely coming back this week? There's a lot of like uncertainty bleeding into some low ownership here that I think it's a little bit straightforward for me. Not super interested in Derrick Henry. I don't think he was showing up I don't think he showed up in the Sims at all. Hold on. Once. So out of 20 teams, Derrick Henry shows up once, right? Same thing for James Cook in the Sims. So, but what you do see is no Allen and Lamar in that 20 set. So that's pretty appealing to me because, again, when we look at the running back stuff, it's all the expensive guys. CMC, a little bit of Bijan, Gibbs, 20% Saquon, a little bit of Henry, a little bit of Cook, right? 6 Bucky Irving teams, which I'm not into that at all. 9 Ashton Genty teams, right? So a lot of the spending is going there. And then, of course, there is plenty of Puka, Amon-Ra, etc. But there's spending up at running back, spending down more so at quarterback. And if there's a spend up at quarterback, it's a little more on the Jalen Hurts side. So if that's how our opponents are going to dive into this game, that's when I just really love to be on these guys over here. It feels like a sneaky get right spot for Henry to me. Everyone is throwing shade for the last fumble, but it was a great punch out. Yeah, I could not care about the fumbles. The Derrick Henry thing is strictly about Derrick Henry for me. He doesn't really catch passes. It's not like an incredible spot. Like any Derrick Henry can have a big game in any single game. It's undeniable. He can rip a long run. You just need what you need from Derrick Henry in games like these is so difficult, specifically on DraftKings. Yeah, I truly don't care about the punch out and about the fumble. Like, I don't care about the fumbles. I mean, I care about the fumbles for Ramondre because Trayvon's going to get on the field, but I don't care about Derrick Henry fumbling at all. I care about Derrick Henry, the fact that he doesn't catch passes and needs to rip a bunch of touchdowns to be optimal from a DFS perspective. And I think that this matchup is not that great for it to happen. I think he's interesting. I think he's legitimately interesting. I think the Ravens overall, right? I think that would be my takeaway. And to a lesser extent, the Chiefs. The Ravens defense has not been good. Now, they played the Bills and they played the Lions, right? This Ravens defense that is like mediocre, I believe, from I don't know why I keep doing. No, 7th worst from an EPA per play perspective. Terrible against the run, as a matter of fact, but net negative across the board so far for the Ravens defense. It's a potential spot for the Chiefs to actually put up some points now that Xavier Worthy is back. I'm not expecting that to be crazy because Kai says Hunt's usage ticked up. I think he flips Pacheco in price this week. Yet he may flip him in price, but those are like straight X outs for me. Like, I just don't see a way in which a Chiefs running back beats me. But Mahomes to Worthy is interesting, and Lamar to Zay or Andrews and Derrick Henry are interesting. I think just comparing these guys to like the Eagles game, this game, if you wanted to say it's Derrick Henry, like I said, I prefer the Lamar Zay or Lamar Andrews side of this thing. But if you wanted to say that the Derrick Henry part of it, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think that this game is just a little bit underowned overall. Our last game, and then we'll maybe build a couple of teams, look at a couple teams, and then we'll get on out of here. We'll leave the Sunday night, Monday night, etc. For a later date. Chicago and Las Vegas. Mahomes catching ownership is just an avoid until Rice is back. I have absolutely zero issues with that. None. Zero. He's going to run. Mahomes is like kind of this weird, sneaky good, like managed league guy where you're like, I have him on my guillotine team as an example, Mahomes. And it's like, I don't know, I'm going to get 15 to 25 every week. He's running a bunch and they're desperate, right? They're 1-2. They're desperate to win some games. But in DFS, like, is he going to break the slate throwing to Tyquan and Juju and the corpse of Hollywood Brown? I don't know. Probably not. Worthy's interesting. But anyway, Bears and Raiders. This game is also catching some ownership, and I don't know how to feel about that one. Ashton Genty is projecting as the highest owned player on the slate, right next to Christian McCaffrey, also right next to Marlon Hampton, also right next to Puka Nacua. I get it. He's 6,200. The volume is solid. The problem is that he is conceding some high value touches to other running backs that it makes me sort of sick. Let's look at just overall snaps. We can compare some of these snaps, routes, etc. 66 total offensive snaps for the Raiders this past week. Now, game got out of hand. So that's a little bit understandable in like not playing every single snap. But you paid a top 10 pick price to get this superstar running back. And he played 40 of 66 snaps. Zamir White played 19. Ashton Genty was in on 17 passing plays. Zamir White was in on 11. Ashton Genty was in on 19 passing plays. He ran 17 routes and pass blocked twice. Zamir White was in on 11, ran 11 routes with 2 pass block reps. That's worrisome. Much less than like is Ashton Genty overrated because he played in the Mountain West? Like, first of all, go look up his missed tackles and yards after contact. He still has a negative yards before contact. He's getting hit in the backfield every play, is essentially. Go look up, I believe you can look up Jacob Gibbs on Twitter. Post some really good stuff. Through 3 weeks, he's still on average on average, getting hit in the backfield on every single time he gets a carry. He's doing some Herculean shit to not be completely awful, but he is getting hit in the backfield we can't deny the fact that the blocking has been absolutely putrid. Let's look at the grades. Oh, that's run blocking. So Bowers blocked okay. Their left tackle blocked like okay. And then it's a bunch of dog shit. Dog shit. Week 2, was it any better in week 2? Nope. Dog shit. They're not blocking for Ashton Jeanty. And then you combine that with the fact that he's losing passing down work. He's losing routes and passing down work to Zamir White. Do you see this? This is the receiving box score from the week 3 game against Washington, in which they lost by a lot, right? Washington punked them. So they were playing from behind. Do you see Ashton Jeanty on there? Not even with a target. That's absurd. Now, does that flip this week? I think it's legitimately possible. You have to do some self-scouting after these last couple of games for the Raiders and think like, maybe we should get Jeanty the ball. But again, ownership is saying we don't care how Ashton Jeanty is being used. We don't care how bad the offensive line is. We don't care about any of that. He's at home against a Bears defense that we don't think is very good. So sign me up. Those are just the spots when the market is ignored, right? It's one of those, we talked about this a lot in week 2. But it's the case for the first 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, right, of the season, where before we get exactly how good all these defenses are, all these offenses are, the really specific roles, right? Is Jeanty going to keep ceding all this work to Zamir White later in the season? I don't know. Probably not. That seems foolish. But I don't know. He is right now. And when the market says what's happening right now, who cares? I don't care, right? When that's what the market says, that's when I want to play into it, because that's when the projection is wrong. That's when people say, oh, he's simming well. It's like, well, the sims are built upon, right, the data from the back end. If that data is wrong, then he shouldn't be simming well, which means he's over-owned, right? And those are the types of situations for the first 6 whatever weeks of the season that I'm trying to identify where could the projections be wrong. I don't think that the projection process is wrong. I don't think that the sim process is wrong. I don't think any of that is wrong. I think like where could the inputs going into there be wrong? And it's like, we're over projecting Ashton Jeanty. We look like the whole thesis is we look back in a few weeks and we were like, yeah, well, why were we playing 30-40% on Ashton Jeanty in these tournaments? Why were we playing 8,500 50% on Christian McCaffrey? Right? Why would I want to be looking back and thinking in that manner, and like, why weren't we playing? Why didn't we just keep playing? Puka's 9,800. Why didn't we play him at 79? Right? Like I want to be out ahead. Now Puka is going to be popular, so it's not a great example, but you get the point, right? Like, why didn't we play 5% on Zay Flowers against the Chiefs or whatever? Those are the kinds of situations I want to I want to be looking back weeks down the road and thinking about it in that manner. And I just think that the Vegas stuff is rough. I will say Brock Bowers is still very good at football. Want to see how his knee is doing. I think $5,800 Brock Bowers against the Bears, if this ownership holds, is really fun, because that's one where the market is doing the opposite of the Jeanty thing. They're saying, oh, we are concerned. Right? We are. Aren't you worried about Ashton Jeanty? Nah, wave. Right? It's the Drake gif. It's the no. Oh, okay. Right? The Ashton Jeanty concerns, no one cares. The Brock Bowers concerns, everyone cares. Is sort of what this is saying. Jacoby Myers is, of course, the most Jacoby Myers ass play ever. I understand it, right? It's a projection thing. He projects for solid volume. He got 10 targets and 12 targets in the first 2 games. I'm never going to be excited about chalky Jacoby Myers. I think it's a pretty good spot for Geno. I will definitely not deny that. And you'll have to forgive me if I don't go back to Trey Tucker after the greatest game in the history of his life. quite literally. The Rome price has got a little bit worrisome. And then DeAndre Swift is just like totally useless. I will say Caleb Rome's stacks are interesting because what we've seen for 3 weeks from the Raiders. Hold on a second. Pardone. The Raiders have been a monster pass funnel. So as much as the $6,300 Rome makes me a little bit nauseous, and just I played Caleb Rome last week, and I feel like I should cash in my chips, right? We got the 30 ball from Caleb. We got a nice DFS week. I think it's probably time to get out of the Caleb Williams business. However, the Raiders have been one of the greatest pass funnels in the league to start this year. They are one of the very best run defenses so far, again, through 3 weeks. Helps playing the Patriots and stuff. But Washington has been generally a pretty good rushing offense, and they slowed down Bill C-Rod. If the Jeremy McNichols run doesn't happen, I don't know if you guys saw the Jeremy McNichols run. It was absurd. He was like stopped like 3 yards downfield, and they just like decided to not take him down, and he just runs down the sideline. It was bizarre. If like that run doesn't happen, like maybe they do grade out as the best run defense in the entire NFL on the season. But they are one of the worst passing defenses in the entire. They got cooked by Marcus Mariota. They struggled, with Drake May. Like, this is not a very good passing off. This is when Kayshon Boutte had his big game, right? Kayshon Boutte has done literally jack shit since he played the Raiders, and he had 100 yards. Kayshon Boutte had 2 catches since he played the Raiders. We were quick to crown Kayshon Boutte, but I'm not so sure that he's that dude. I think the Raiders might be that bad, which means Caleb Williams plus Rome Odunze is probably just a good play again. You have bringbacks on the other side. If you like Genty more than I do, sure, go for it. There's Bowers at tight end. We'll see what's up with Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland, right? There's Jacoby as a wide receiver. You don't have to play a bringback. There's no rule that says you have to play bringbacks on all of your teams, but I think that Bears and Raiders game is kind of fun if this Raiders thing is sticky. We were a year early on Zamir, 100%. Yeah, 6K Trey Tucker would be absolutely hilarious, but that is on FanDuel. Do people still think Chip Kelly is a good coach? I fucking hope not. God, what an absolute disaster. Okay, Adrian had a question, and then we can check out a couple teams. I have not even built a shell team or anything, so this you guys will go along for the ride and see what my first instinct gut take is. And I don't know what it's going to be. Has Thornton's solidified a role? Feel like he's their best wide receiver? It's tough to say. Worthy is back. I when Rashid comes back, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know. I think his field stretching is valuable to their team. I don't know if they're going to value him more than the veteran Hollywood presence or whatever. So we'll see. I think Tyquan should probably play, but that's just me. Was offered JSN for Bucky. Okay. My ears perk up. Have Hurts, CMC, Bucky, JJ, McConkey, Devontae. Yes, I would take JSN. I will take JSN for Bucky. My worry is Bucky is top 10 with no touchdowns yet, but I have a lot of running backs. So the thing for me is, Bucky is fine. You have like the most loaded. You have Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Amarian Hampton, J.K. Dobbins, and Cam Scadaboo, who just, right. Hampton and Scadaboo. Now, let's look at the projections at the running back position. Bucky is totally fine. This is PPR, of course. Bucky projects, in the 18, 19 range. Who do you have? Hampton projects in the 16-point range. I think that's a little light. Scadaboo projects, I believe, in the 16-point range. 15. These guys are like workhorses themselves. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins not showing up here, but he's the lead back for the Denver Broncos. They also play the Bengals this week, which is pretty sexy. I think you want that every week, right? So here's the other thing I think about from a season-long perspective, and the thing everyone knows this, but I feel like it's the thing that always has to keep being reiterated, is knowing who to start every week, no matter what the matchup is so powerful that I want to limit as many spots on my team where I have a guy that I have to decide between multiple players. You're obviously starting Hurts, you're starting CMC every single week. For me, you start Hampton every single week. You probably start Brees every single week. And right now you can start Scadaboo every single week. Do you really feel good about starting Ladd right now? He's fine. But like, do you really feel good about starting Devontae? I assume Devontae Smith. Do you really feel good about starting Josh Downs or Jawan Jennings or Troy Franklin? Like, they're all like useful, like best ball assets, or like maybe you start them in a DFS league. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, you just plug in. Doesn't matter who they play, whatever. He's a wide receiver one for you every single week, and you already have a bunch of running back ones. So from a managed league perspective, I'm always trying to think about it like, how many guys can I accumulate onto my team that are must start every single week, no brainers? And Jackson Smith and Jigba is that. Bucky is, but you don't have any more of those guys at wide receiver besides Justin Jefferson, and you have a bunch of those at running back. So like, that's kind of how I think about putting those puzzle pieces together. For me, it's like, that's why it's really hard. It's really easy to fall into the trap of like, when you build it, not your team is good. When you build like a season-long team, of like dipping your toes in the waters of like a position of weakness too early. And then you're not like, we here at Spike Week have a like co-managed main event where we're not very good at running back. We have an elite quarterback and elite tight end. That's a big positive. But we're like just okay at wide receiver. Like, it's fine, but we're not like dominant at wide receiver. We don't always know who to start at flex, and we don't always know who to start at RB2 because our running backs are not that great, and the wide receivers are just fine. And what you really want to be, and that was just a little bit of bad luck, but what you really want to be is like, I want to, like, maybe I'll have a discussion about who to start at RB2 every week, right? Or just at my flex spot every week. But that's because I'm dominating all the other positions. Your team can just straight up dominate and like never have to think about who to start. And like, that's the best thing you can have from a managed league perspective, because once you start introducing more decisions, start sit decisions, once you start introducing more of that, the more variance comes into your game. You can screw things up. Bad luck can happen to you. Waiting on Rashee Rice feels like Christmas, but we're all waiting on a brand new Huffy. And instead I'm worried we end up with a pet rock. I love it. Yes, Chaperone Taekwon has been beautiful. Rice return will dominate the target share with other. Yeah, we'll see. It's been a long time since we've seen Rashee Rice. I agree with Consigliere. I'm very excited for him to get back, but I'm not gonna put the cart in front of the horse on exactly what the guy hasn't played football in a very long time. So we'll see. Sent a trade offer for Achane for Hampton and Jacoby. I Brock Bowers, so I need those target shares to move that way. You sent Achane, or you're trying to get Achane because you're trying to get rid of Jacoby. That's interesting. I don't know that Achane is any more valuable than Hampton without Najee. I appreciate a good piece of goal. All right, let's build a team or two and then get the hell out of here. I got to go play some hoop. I really do want to see what one of these. Who I would stack Josh Allen with is the trickiest part of all this, bar none. I think there's. I don't want to place Khalil Shakir, so let's get that out of the way. Not in DFS. I think the upside swing is Keon for sure, but Dalton Kincaid is interesting and reasonable ownership. He's earning targets in games where it's competitive. Now, he earned 6 targets on 24 pass attempts. So from what's he up to on Dalton Kincaid has 45% of the Buffalo Bill. Oh, that was in week 3. Dalton Kincaid has 17% of team air yards, but he is he is second on the team in targets while playing just 51% of the snaps. And of course, he has two touchdowns. So he's outperforming expectation a little bit, but he's earning a lot of targets on a minimum amount of routes. At the tight end position, that is appealing to me, but I do still think like the who's the guy who could have 102 is Keon. It hasn't been awesome after week 1 from him, but I think he's going to be super duper low owned. I think you can play Allen with just Keon and multiple Saints actually. So let's try to do the I like Olave. Let's do Olave and Juwan as bringbacks to just the Allen and Keon thing. Just once, just to see how it feels. Let's plug in a defense just to get a feel for what we have left. I was willing to stack Cook and Allen and BBM. I'm willing to try it against the Saints. Yeah, I think it's fine. I do think it's fine. I think it's probably a little bit over owned because people will say that as well. I think it's a logical conclusion to be like, I don't really know who to pick here. I know that Josh Allen and James Cook are just going to get all the work, but I think that's how people will like. They'll play Allen naked, or they'll play him with James Cook even more than they'll play him with Keon or Kincaid or Shakir or whatever. So that's just a guess. Let's get a defense in here. I'm also want to talk about the defense thing super quickly. Just paying, everybody loves this pay down stuff. Pricing is so loose. Like, honestly, what really carried me more so than anything else last week in DFS was just playing the Vikings defense. And it's like people are unwilling to play the best defensive plays of the week because they're 3,200. They feel like the need there's this $2,300 defense. I just have to play them. And it's like the Browns defense against the Packers is more owned than the Vikings against Jake Browning and that terrible offensive line with the pressure that the Vikings bring, getting their starters back. That kind of stuff is crazy. Even though we know that the pricing is loose, like everybody's like, we got 2 4K quarterbacks. Jordan Mason is way too cheap. Ken Walker is way too cheap. Right? Roma Dunze is way too cheap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no spend up quarterbacks, and no one is willing to spend $3,200 or $3,400 on a defense. That's something to take advantage of, I think. All right. Let's look at the Chargers against old Jackson Dart are interesting. The Texans actually got priced up. That's funny. The Texans got priced up. I don't have a strong conviction. I had a lot of conviction about the Vikings last week. I don't have as strong of a conviction off the rip here on defenses. Definitely feels like DFS right now is about making stands and leaving money on the table more than usual. If you played Hurt stacks with Chalk D and running backs, you were close to having the whole thing. Yeah. I don't think you have to leave a bunch of money on the table or anything. But of course, there are times where you definitely can. It's one of those we're in this weird spot where pricing hasn't like totally firmed up, and then it's reacting to right. It like reacts in certain spots, right? Like Ibuka got priced up quite a bit, but then like whatever Rome last week didn't get priced up, et cetera, et cetera. There's certain spots where the pricing is still like very, very soft. And I think overall it's still pretty soft, right? There's nobody above, like there's no wide receivers above 8K. There's no running backs above 84, 8,500 or whatever on DraftKings. Even the elite quarterbacks like have generally been in the $8,000 range, and they're in the 7s. And so it's pretty loose, but that what ends up happening for me, again, I'm like more of I'm building a million maker team here, but in the smaller field type stuff is like fighting the fancy play syndrome is key, because you can find just like truly awesome plays that project well, that have a ton of upside or whatever, that are just completely overlooked. And you don't have to, right? You don't have to always gravitate away from all of the chalk. Now, every slate is a little bit different. This week is much different than last week. I don't think it's even particularly close. Last week was like, my God, what do we do? This chalk is like the best chalk in years. It's not the case this week by any stretch of the imagination, but navigating, like you said, navigating the fact that like there are so many underpriced plays and so many playable plays, many of them will be popular. How do we put right? It's lineups, not players. As soon as you played JSN, maybe a different tight end, right? This is what I did. Played JSN and George Pickens, and I punted tight end when no one was punting tight end, and played the Vikings. And it's like, I played all the chalk. Like literally played all the chalk around that. JSN over Walker, Pickens over CD and Javonte, and then whatever, play the best plays, right? And find a defense that's like actually an awesome play, but no one is playing. It's like, sounds good to me. I love it. Okay, let's build out this. Let's do the Jackson Dart is not him team, which means, where's my Chargers? Chargers and Hampton. We're going to do Chargers and Amari and Hampton. Gives me a lot of money to play with. What did we say? Puka. Oh God, here you go. So if we agree with Downs or AD Mitchell, right? Let's just say it's Downs, but you could do AD Mitchell. So I believe this is Genty. Yeah. Fuck. I could, but we could, you can always like swap some things around here. Said you could go down to AD Mitchell as opposed to Josh Downs, which would get you up to Derrick Henry, who we talked about. That's interesting. You could just go down a little bit to Parker Washington, would get you Bucky, I think, which I know I'm not big on Bucky, but you kind of get the gist, right? Of, look, you can just jam some of the best plays, jam Puka, jam Hampton, jam, you could definitely figure out a way to get CMC in here if you would prefer CMC. You can play Genty if you like Genty more than I do. And I do like Genty. The matchup is good and everything. I think he's going to have some good games, but it's the ownership angle. You can go back and listen to that. Let's see what I want to see what the Rams game. I really hate. I mean, 5,900 Matthew Stafford is just like such a non-fucking starter. Like when he's just never. Let's just do Daniel Jones. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I'm going to do Daniel Jones. So here's a fun one, because you can do Puka, you can do Devontae, we can pick one of the Colts wide receivers, we can play Tyler Warren, we can just full on game stack this thing, right? I'm sorry, I just prefer Josh Downs. All right, and then let's plug in a defense. You're seeing how I'll like mess around hand building stuff. I'll run some sims, right? I'll run some optimals and start to look through how those look. And then I will sit for the next 3 days and tinker around with what the sims are spitting out and what these game stacks and stuff look like, and just start moving pieces around, seeing, then comparing them to, how they project versus all this different kind of stuff. But I love just like there's truly nothing better, and I will never stop the hand building portion of my DFS play of like, okay, we like this Colts thing, we like this Rams thing, let's just hand build it a little bit. Let's massage this stack. See what kind of combinations we can get. You can also plug some stuff into, right? Make some rules or plug some stuff into the optimizers and the sims and help if you would rather systematically do it. Bucks D against Hurts. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy at all. Let's plug. I want to play. I'm gonna play some Texans defense this week. So let's plug Texans in. Just ignore that game. The Texans score twice on defense is our plan, right? That's what we're gonna do in that one. 6K. I want to see what I actually quite like. Hampton plus Scat together, which then gives us 6,800, would give us a Buca. So then you could, I mean, you can play a Buca. There's nothing wrong with the Buca by any stretch. You could do Stafford instead of Jones and then play Ladd and make that a full right stack. Basically, that's kind of fun. Stack 2 games, right? If we go to Stafford and then you go down to Ladd, Stafford is $300 more than Daniel Jones. Ladd is 6,500, and you say, okay, these are the 2 games. Chargers, Giants. It's smaller field stuff with that game stack. Why not Colts or Rams? Colts or Rams defense? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. I have a game, like I have 2 Colts pass catchers and 2 Rams pass catchers. I had betting on this game to go full nuke already. The defenses are negatively. If the offenses are going full nuke, I don't want the defenses. The defenses are going to be not scoring fantasy points. I want the defenses from the games, the other games, right? I want the defenses to score fantasy points. It's with touchdowns and sacks and stuff like that. I don't want the defenses scoring fantasy points. And no, you don't. The last thing you want is a pick 6 if you're like fully onslaughting game stacking a game. The pick 6 can work, right? Like against Jameis Winston or something like that. We want offensive points and big plays. We don't want turnovers. We want touchdowns from the offense. We want defensive touchdowns in other games, right? So like last week, the Vikings go nuts. It's like Vikings plus Jordan Mason. But the Bengals were not going to win you a tournament with the Vikings defense winning you a tournament. If the Rams defense wins you a tournament this week, it's like there's just no way. It's not really conceivable for the whole game to blow up from a fantasy sense, meaning like Puka's having a big game, Devontae's having a big game, Daniel Jones is going crazy, throwing to a bunch of guys, and there's just only so many plays in a game. If the defense takes away a possession from their own offense and also scores on it, it's a killer to like the full stacking element of the game. There's times where, different slates, different things fit, right? The pick 6 can help a, buck stack or something, but like Colts defense on this or Rams defense on this, I think would have the opposite impact of what we're hoping for. But anyway, you see kind of, right, obviously don't have to play the Texans. We talked, what was House in Motion mentioned would be an interesting one. If you do like that Bucks thing, we talked about Nico. That gets you Nico. What's the other defenses down there? The Chiefs are 2,800. If you don't believe in Lamar, I don't recommend that. But you see kind of like how we start to think about hand building some teams and then come back right on Sunday, massage those out a little bit and see where we land with all the latest in the injury reports. Hopefully that was fun, helpful, what have you. There's where I'm sort of thinking about from a game by game perspective, all the different currently projected popular plays, how we're feeling about those, some of our favorite game stacks, a couple teams that foundational hand-built teams that we like for week 4. If you guys can hit that like button super quickly while you're on your way out, if you're in the app, X out of the live chat and hit the like super fast. It's super helpful. I'm having a ton of fun, honestly, doing these DFS breakdowns every single week. You can get into the mind of someone who's really a hand builder in small field DFS tournaments, but is trying to use some of our tools and stuff, find some things that maybe our opponents are not factoring in enough or are factoring in too much. I'll be back tomorrow to draft some teams. We're going to draft some underdog battle royale teams and some drafters weekly teams tomorrow morning, same bat time, same bat channel, 10 a.m. Eastern here. Subscribe to the channel so you can get notified, all that kind of stuff. hop in the Discord, etc. You guys know the housekeeping. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.